And welcome to Arguments for Theism here on Examining Evidence. This is episode 1. Today we're going to be discussing the Kalam cosmological argument, some of the objections to it, and particularly accusations against Dr. William Lane Craig himself. Now, this video in no way is meant to be a Bible-thumping video. This is merely an examining, hence the title of my channel, examining of the evidence presented for the Kalam and against the Kalam. We're also going to be looking at some of Vilenkin's statements, what Vilenkin means by his theory. Vilenkin does believe that the universe did have a complete beginning, and we can reference that later in the video, or even leave a link. But I want to start out by saying two of the biggest objections to the Kalam cosmological argument seem to be the equivocation fallacy, but this will be shown to be false later. That comes into play with contingency, necessary causes, that kind of thing, material causes versus metaphysical causes. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But the first thing I want to talk about is the big objection against Craig, which is typically that the universe did not begin to exist. And you know, it's really interesting too, because we're starting to see in science, I mean, we've always seen this, but as far as Big Bang cosmology, we're starting to see more and more debate on it. We're starting to see guys like Krauss and, well, not Krauss. Krauss is actually a bad example. Krauss personally believes that the universe came literally from nothing, that nothing was able to create it. But the interesting thing is when Krauss says this, he's still referencing gravitational constants and gravitational hole, especially a black hole, but you still have something. There's still something required there, and that's the black hole itself, which still is technically something. So that's where that comes from, that big argument on as far as Krauss. Krauss at least admits he believes that the universe comes from nothing. Sean Carroll, physicist, believes, he's debated Craig before, he believes more of a fluctuating or oscillating universe, which has been disproven by Vilenkin countless times. But it seems like science now is trying to go the other way, in many different ways. Like I said, Krauss believes it came from nothing. Sean Carroll believes in a fluctuating, eternal, pretty much, universe, is what he's saying. Even though a multiverse theorem would disprove the idea of an eternal universe. True, the multiverse would have to be eternal in its essence, but the universe itself would not be. Now, I want to go to a quick YouTube objection. This was brought up by the Rational Channel, and I would like to commend them for being very honest on that video. They were not too, and I'll try to leave a link in the description for it, but the Rational Channel was very honest, but I do have one problem. At one point they said in the video that just because it began to exist and the thing outside, in quotations, per se, of that said universe is unknown, they said it could be something timeless or spaceless, is what they said. They almost said transcendent in a way. And the interesting thing is, that is what we would describe as God. And it seems like they totally missed their point. That was around like the 5-minute point on their video. But the interesting thing is, it comes down to, for a lot of scientists and atheists, well, okay, we'll admit some form of spaceless thing apart from natural sciences, maybe it's something other science, but we don't know what it is. But it sounds exactly like God, metaphysical, transcendent, existing outside of the material realm. Really, this comes down to a debate of idealism, realism, metaphysics, really. But people want to keep it on the science. It's really interesting. But yeah, that accusation, it was basically saying, well, maybe there was something else that was transcendent outside of the universe. But really, can you really think of anything besides God that's transcendent, spaceless, timeless, immaterial. It'd be a very interesting form of atheism. I'm going to quote Craig here to admit, as an atheist, that there is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial being that caused the universe. Very interesting. The other thing that I've seen is people like to say that Craig has misrepresented Vilenkin from the Borg-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, which basically proves the universe began in the finite past. They want to say that Craig disregards Vilenkin's aspect of believing the multiverse, which in fact Vilenkin recently has been believing in the multiverse, but the critics miss the point. Craig is describing the universe, not the multiverse itself. Vilenkin views the multiverse almost the way theists would view God. Multiverse was before the universe, and it created the universe to come into being. Okay? It was still material, and it brought about the universe. Essentially, the multiverse is a scientific, I would say, cop-out, and replacer for God. Essentially, something we can't see, and it brings into existence the universe, or universes. So, at this point, Vilenkin and Craig agree on the point that the universe itself did have a beginning, thus supporting the Kalam. And that was backed up by redshift, Hubble pictures, his mathematical proof why the universe itself could not have an infinite past. You know, these guys like Sean Carroll aren't disputing that idea. They're just merely saying it was bouncing around and stuff, and there's multiverse tied to it. So the interesting thing about this is Craig and Vilenkin agree, just not on the multiverse. A lot of people say, well, no, that's a lie. It's funny because Vilenkin even admits Dr. Craig represents his views. It can be seen in this email. It can be verified online. So this argument really isn't even about Kalam. It's about some atheists, again, I'm not trying to put all of them in, some atheists trying to say, well, if there's something else that could be described as God, we can use that. And that's what it seems like to me, at least with some of these cop-outs from the multiverse and some of the string theory. And heck, even Neil deGrasse Tyson is still waiting for evidence for string theory and multiverse theory. I know not a lot of people prescribe to multiverse theory, but when certain atheists bring this up, it makes me scratch my head because, again, there has been no development there. And if you're proposing science, evidence, let's bring something to the table. I mean, at least the theists have some Kalam, they have contingency arguments, Leibniz ontological arguments. You know, you can argue them all day long, but at least we have some good arguments for it. Multiverse is just plucked out of the air. But that's all really I wanted to talk about in this video. I'm sure you guys saw the trailer for Theism versus Atheism, the controversy. I'm looking really forward to that movie. Let me know in the comments any inputs or responses to arguments you want me to put in that documentary. It's still in the works. Hopefully I'll have it out by summer. That's the hope, by summer, June, July, sometime around then. If we get it earlier, even great. But I wanted to thank you guys for sticking with me here on the Examining Evidence. You could call this a podcast, I guess. And we'll see you next time.